Islamic theology presents a terrifying scenario for the end of days. On the Day of Judgment, humanity is gathered together, paralyzed by fear, desperately searching for someone worthy enough to intercede for them before Allah. According to the authoritative Hadith of intercession, the panicked crowd approaches the greatest prophets in history. They beg Adam, Noah, Abraham, and Moses for help, but one by one, each prophet refuses. And they refuse for a very specific reason. They each confess a past earthly sin, an ancient moral failure that disqualifies them from standing before God on behalf of mankind. Then the crowd reaches Jesus. Here, the narrative does something entirely unexpected. Jesus is the only prophet in this sequence who confesses no sin. He brings up no moral failure, requires no personal repentance, and simply directs the people forward to the next figure. We can see the source of this account right here on the ornate, gold-lettered spines of these authoritative Islamic texts, specifically Sahih al-Bukhari. The Hadith states that the people finally go to Muhammad and he accepts the role of intercessor. But he doesn't accept it because he is sinless. He accepts it explicitly because he is, quote, a slave whose past and future sins have been forgiven by Allah. This sharp divide extends directly into the Quran itself. While Surah 19 describes Jesus as a faultless and pure son from birth, the text repeatedly commands Muhammad to actively ask forgiveness for his own moral failings. Why would Islam's foundational literature depict its own founder as a man requiring massive divine amnesty while presenting Jesus as entirely pure? The answer lies in the historical record of how each man lived. Jesus expanded his movement through healing, teaching, and self-sacrifice. Muhammad built his empire through military force, strategic warfare, and the edge of the sword. Looking at this vintage photograph of the walled city of Medina, we can anchor ourselves in the actual historical setting where Muhammad's military campaigns accelerated and where he rapidly consolidated his political power. During this consolidation, his forces clashed directly with the Banu Qurayza, a Jewish tribe living within the region. The aftermath of that clash was brutal. Following a siege, Muhammad oversaw the mass execution of the tribe. Hundreds of Jewish men and pubescent boys were lined up and beheaded in the city's trenches. Acquiring and maintaining absolute political and military power invariably requires shedding blood. By executing hundreds of captives, the standard of a completely faultless, unblemished life, the exact life modeled by Jesus, is broken. We see the moral cost of this military expansion even more clearly at Khaybar, pictured in these stone ruins set amidst a vast palm grove. After conquering the area, Muhammad interrogated the Jewish leader Kanana ibn al-Rabi. To extract information about hidden tribal treasure, Muhammad ordered Kanana to be tortured. Following the execution of the tribal leaders, Muhammad took Kanana's young widow, Safiya, as his wife. This occurred on the exact same day her husband and family were slaughtered by his army. These incidents point to a broader systemic policy regarding the treatment of vulnerable populations in wartime. Specifically, the armies institutionalized the practice of taking female war captives as sexual slaves. Looking at this ancient Arabic script on parchment, we find the legal foundation for these actions. Passages like Surah 424 and the Hadith records in Sahih Muslim show that new revelations were delivered to legally dissolve the captives' existing marriages, expressly making grieving women sexually available to the soldiers who had just defeated their families. A perfect human exemplar would not institute the sexual exploitation of newly widowed women. The mechanics of building a military empire degraded the movement's moral core. While Jesus spent his final days offering forgiveness to his enemies, Muhammad used his deathbed to issue orders to ethnically cleanse the Arabian Peninsula of all non-believers. Building that unified Arabian empire also required deep political compromises. As we see in this image of the Kaaba and the crowd surrounding it, the new religion retained the distinctly pagan practice of kissing the black stone, simply to appease the local tribes. Even Caliph Umar, one of the earliest and most powerful Islamic leaders, explicitly admitted that the stone has no divine power to help or harm. He participated in the ritual solely because he saw Muhammad do it. This diagram brings us straight back to the Day of Judgment. Muhammad requires sweeping divine forgiveness because a life built on warfare, mass executions, and political compromise carries a massive moral debt. When stripped of theological bias and judged purely by the historical record of their actions, the contrast is absolute. The prophet who requires no divine amnesty because he lived a faultless life of peace holds the ultimate moral supremacy.